I stood alone in that funeral home parking lot, still wearing my black dress, still clutching my dead husband's personal effects, watching my own children drive away without me. They'd taken the car. They'd gone to the restaurant. They'd left their 72-year-old mother stranded like I was just another piece of funeral home furniture they'd forgotten to collect. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Harold had been listening. He'd heard every word of their inheritance plans. Every cruel calculation. Every greedy scheme they'd made while he was dying in the next room. And he'd made sure I'd have the last word. This is the story of how my family abandoned me at the worst moment of my life, and how I made sure they'd never get the chance to do it again. The funeral director handed me Harold's personal effects in a small manila envelope. His watch. His wedding ring. The reading glasses he'd worn for 30 years. I clutched that envelope against my chest like it might bring him back. "Mrs. Patterson, is someone picking you up?" he asked gently. The chapel had emptied out 20 minutes ago. The flowers were already being loaded into vans. The chairs were being stacked. I looked around the empty room. My children, they said they'd wait. But they hadn't waited. Not Robert, not Linda, not Sarah. The parking lot was empty except for my sedan, the one I couldn't drive because my hands shake too much when I'm upset. Harold always drove us everywhere. The funeral director offered to call me a taxi. I sat in that funeral home lobby for 45 minutes, still in my black coat, still holding Harold's things, waiting for one of my children to remember I existed. When Robert finally answered his phone, I could hear laughter in the background. Clinking glasses. The sound of a restaurant. "Mom? Oh God, we're so sorry. We thought you went with Linda. We're already at Romano's. The table's reserved for 20 people. Can you just take an Uber or something? We'll see you at home later." I hung up. Sat there in that funeral home chair, surrounded by the smell of lilies and industrial carpet cleaner. That's when I realized I wasn't just grieving my husband. I was grieving my family too. It hadn't always been this way. Or maybe it had, and Harold just made it bearable. Growing up, Robert was my golden boy. Straight A's, football scholarship, became a doctor. Linda was my artistic one. Always drawing, always dreaming. Sarah came 10 years later, our surprise baby, and Harold spoiled her rotten. But somewhere along the way things shifted. Robert married Jessica, and suddenly every family gathering became about their opinions, their schedules, their needs. Linda moved to Seattle for her art career and called twice a year. Sarah learned to manipulate before she could tie her shoes. When Harold had his first heart attack 2 years ago, I called all 3 of them. Robert came to the hospital but spent the whole time on his phone with patients. Linda sent flowers. Sarah showed up but immediately started talking about how stressful this was for her, how she might need therapy. "Mom, you're being dramatic," Robert told me when I mentioned feeling ignored. "We're all dealing with this in our own way." Harold squeezed my hand from his hospital bed. "Don't let them make you feel small, Betty," he whispered. "You're stronger than you know." But I did feel small. Especially after Harold got home and started getting weaker. The kids would visit and talk around me, not to me. About me like I wasn't there. "Mom's going to need more help soon," Jessica would say to Robert right in front of me. "My mother went through this. It's better to make decisions early." "What decisions?" I'd ask. "Oh, nothing immediate, Mom. We're just thinking ahead." Harold tried to buffer it. He'd change the subject, make jokes, remind them I was right there listening. But I could see the worry in his eyes. He knew what I was too afraid to admit. They were already planning my life without me. 3 months before Harold died, I found him in his office at 2 a.m. writing letters by hand. "Can't sleep?" I asked. He startled, then smiled. "Just taking care of some things, sweetheart. Making sure you're protected." "Protected from what?" He kissed my forehead. "From people who mistake kindness for weakness." Harold's funeral was on a Tuesday. By Thursday, Robert was sitting at my kitchen table with a stack of paperwork. "Mom, we need to get Dad's account sorted out. I've got the forms right here." Just sign where I've marked with the sticky notes. I stared at the papers. Bank statements. Investment accounts. The deed to our house. What am I signing exactly? Just transferring things into your name. Standard stuff. Jessica's friend is a financial planner. She said it's better to consolidate everything now before the government gets involved. Sarah leaned against the counter, filing her nails. Also, Mom, we've been talking. This house is way too big for you now. And expensive. The property taxes alone are killing you. The property taxes are fine. Are they though? Robert's voice had that patronizing tone he used with difficult patients. Dad wasn't exactly forthcoming about your finances. We found some concerning bills. That was a lie. Harold and I had always been careful with money. We owned the house outright. Had savings. Good insurance. But I didn't argue. I was too tired to argue. We think you should move in with one of us, Linda said. She'd flown in from Seattle and was staying through the weekend. Or we could look at some nice assisted living places. Nothing fancy, just safer. I don't need assisted living. I need my husband back. They exchanged looks. The look that said, Mom's being difficult again. It's not about what you need, Mom, Sarah said. It's about what's practical. You can't drive. You can't maintain this house. Dad isn't here to take care of you anymore. Take care of me. Like I was an invalid. Like I hadn't taken care of Harold through 2 heart attacks, diabetes, and 6 months of chemotherapy. Like I hadn't been taking care of everyone else my whole life. That night I couldn't sleep. I went to Harold's office and started going through his papers. That's when I found the letter, tucked inside his copy of our wedding album. Betty, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably feeling lost. Don't let them rush you into anything. Don't sign anything without talking to Bill Henderson first. His number is in my address book. I've made sure you're taken care of, but only if you stand up for yourself. You're stronger than they think. Stronger than you think. I love you. H. Bill Henderson. Harold's lawyer for 25 years. I'd met him at a few Christmas parties but never thought much about him. Friday morning while the kids were out running errands, I called his office. Mrs. Patterson, Bill's voice was warm, familiar. I've been expecting your call. Bill Henderson's office smelled like old books and coffee. He was maybe 60 with kind eyes and the sort of calm demeanor that made you trust him immediately. Harold was very specific about how this should be handled, he said, pulling out a thick folder with my name on it. He was worried about your children's intentions. Their intentions? Mrs. Patterson, did Harold ever mention updating his will in the last year? I thought about it. He said he was taking care of some paperwork. I assumed it was insurance stuff. Bill opened the folder. Harold created what's called a living trust. Everything, the house, the bank accounts, the investments, his life insurance, it all goes to you with very specific conditions. He showed me the documents. Pages and pages of legal language that might as well have been written in Sanskrit. The simple version is this. You inherit everything, but you can't be pressured into giving it away. Any major financial decisions have to go through me. And when you pass away, you get to decide who receives what. Not your children. You. I stared at the papers. Harold did this without telling me? He wanted to tell you, but he was afraid it would hurt your feelings. He loved your children, Mrs. Patterson, but he didn't trust them not to take advantage of your grief. They wouldn't. Bill pulled out another document. This is a conversation Harold recorded on his phone 6 months ago. Would you like to hear it? He pressed play on a small digital recorder. Harold's voice, weak but clear. I'm just saying, when Mom goes, we need to be smart about the assets. That house is worth at least $400,000. If we sell it and split it 3 ways, that's a nice chunk of change for everyone. Another voice. Robert. Plus her life insurance. And whatever's left in savings. Sarah's voice. We just have to make sure she doesn't waste it all on some nursing home. Keep her at home as long as possible, Then when she gets really bad, well, Medicaid exists for a reason. Laughter. My children laughing about my future decline like it was a business opportunity. Harold's voice again strained. That's not, she's your mother. Robert, she's also going to be a responsibility. We need to be practical, Dad. The recording ended. I sat there staring at the machine like it might explode. Your husband was heartbroken, Bill said quietly. But he was also smart. This trust protects you from being manipulated or coerced. They can't force you to sell the house. They can't access your accounts. They can't make medical decisions for you unless you're truly incapacitated, and even then I'm involved in the process. I thought about the papers Robert wanted me to sign. The assisted living facilities they'd been researching. The way they talked around me like I was already gone. What do I need to do? Nothing for now. Live your life. Grieve your husband. Let them make their demands. And when they push too hard, he handed me his business card. You give them this. That weekend my children circled like sharks. Sarah brought more pamphlets for senior living communities. Linda started talking about decluttering the house. Robert showed up with Jessica and a real estate agent, just to get an idea of the market value. I nodded along. Smiled when appropriate. Let them make their plans. We could have the house listed by next month, the realtor said. The market is hot right now. Perfect time to sell. Oh, I don't think I'm ready for that, I said mildly. Mom, Robert's voice had an edge to it. We've been over this. You can't live here alone. It's not safe. I feel safe. Well, feelings aren't facts. Jessica's found a lovely place about 10 minutes from our house. You could see the grandkids every day. The grandkids who barely knew my name. The grandkids who were more interested in their phones than their grandmother. I need more time to think about it. Sarah slammed her coffee cup down. Time for what? To get more confused? More stubborn? Dad's been gone for 2 weeks, Mom. It's time to be realistic. Realistic. Like grief had a timeline. Like love had an expiration date. I understand you're trying to help. Are we though? Linda looked exhausted. Because it feels like we're trying to save you from yourself and you're fighting us every step of the way. Maybe I don't need saving. They left that afternoon in a huff. Muttering about stubborn old women and impossible situations. I sat in my kitchen, Harold's letter in my lap, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. They came back the following Tuesday with an ultimatum. All 3 of them plus Jessica for backup. Mom, we've been patient, Robert said, settling into Harold's chair like he owned it. But this has gone on long enough. We're not asking anymore. You're signing these papers today. He spread out the documents again. Transfer papers for the bank accounts. A power of attorney form. A listing agreement for the house. And we've got you an appointment tomorrow to tour Sunset Manor, Sarah added. It's all arranged. I haven't agreed to tour anything. You don't have to agree, Jessica said. She was always the most blunt of the bunch. You're grieving. You're not thinking clearly. Sometimes family has to make hard decisions. I looked around the table at these people. My children. The babies I'd nursed and raised and worried over for decades. When had they become strangers? I'm thinking very clearly, I said. No, you're not. Linda leaned forward, her voice taking on that fake gentle tone you use with confused elderly people. Mom, you're 72 years old. You haven't driven in months. You can barely manage the grocery shopping. Living alone isn't realistic anymore. Harold managed just fine and he was 75. Harold was different. How? He was, Robert struggled for a word. More capable. More capable. Like being a woman automatically made me helpless. I stood up and walked to the kitchen drawer where I'd been keeping Bill Henderson's business card for the past week. You want to discuss my finances? I asked, returning to the table. My living situation? My future? Yes, Sarah said. Finally. I placed the business card in the center of the table. Then you can discuss it with my lawyer. The silence was deafening. Robert picked up the card. What lawyer? Why do you have a lawyer? The same lawyer your father used. Bill Henderson. He's been managing my affairs since Harold died. Managing what affairs? Jessica's voice was sharp. We've been helping you with everything. Helping me? Or helping yourselves? Mom, Linda's voice was warning. No. I sat back down, folding my hands calmly. Let me be very clear. I know about the recording. Their faces went white. I know what you said about my life insurance. About selling my house. About keeping me home until I'm too sick to protest, then dumping me on Medicaid. That's not, Robert started. That's exactly what it was. Your father heard every word. And he made sure I'd be protected from it. I pulled out the trust documents Bill had given me copies of. Everything Harold owned now belongs to me. The house. The bank accounts. The investments. All of it. And it stays mine until I die. Not until I'm incompetent. Not until you decide I'm too much trouble. Until I die. Sarah was reading over Robert's shoulder, her face getting redder by the minute. This is ridiculous, she said. Dad wouldn't do this. He loved us. He did love you. That's why he was so heartbroken when he heard you planning to cash in on my grief. We were trying to help. Were you? Because abandoning me at the funeral home didn't feel very helpful. Neither did bringing a real estate agent to my house a week after I buried my husband. Jessica grabbed the trust documents. This isn't legal. You can't just, we're his children. We have rights. You had rights to a father who loved you despite your greed. You don't have rights to money that isn't yours. The yelling started then. Accusations flying back and forth. How I was being manipulated by a lawyer. How Harold was senile at the end. How I was selfish and ungrateful. I sat quietly through all of it. When they finally ran out of steam, I spoke. Any future discussions about my finances, my health, or my living arrangements go through Bill Henderson. His number is on the card. I'm sure he'd be happy to explain the trust to you in detail. Mom, please, Linda said, tears in her eyes. We're family. Family doesn't abandon each other at funeral homes. Family doesn't plan inheritance strategies while the body is still warm. Family doesn't treat widows like inconvenient obstacles to overcome. They left. Slamming doors, making threats, promising this wasn't over. But it was over. At least the part where I let them treat me like a burden was over. That evening I called Bill Henderson. How did it go? He asked. About as well as you'd expect. What happens now? Now you live your life, Mrs. Patterson. On your terms. Bill, when I do pass away, the trust says I can decide who gets what? That's correct. You can change the beneficiaries at any time. Harold wanted to make sure your final wishes were respected, not his. I thought about Harold's words. About people who mistake kindness for weakness. I want to make some changes to the will. What kind of changes? I want to leave half of the estate to St. Mary's Hospital. Harold volunteered there for 15 years. And half to the literacy program at the library. I taught children to read there for 23 years. And your children? I looked around my living room. At the photos of birthday parties and Christmas mornings. At the memories of a family that used to exist. My children have made it very clear they're capable of taking care of themselves. 6 months later, I was still living in my house. Still driving to the grocery store twice a week, despite what they'd claimed about my abilities. Still volunteering at the library on Tuesdays. My children stopped calling after their lawyer told them the trust was ironclad. Sarah sent a nasty letter saying I'd destroyed the family. Robert tried to have me declared incompetent, but Bill Henderson shut that down quickly. Linda surprised me by calling on my birthday. I'm sorry, Mom, she said. About everything. About Dad's funeral, about the way we acted. I was scared and I handled it badly. Scared of what? Of losing you too. Of having to watch you get old and sick like Dad did. It felt easier to just make decisions quickly and avoid the messy parts. I thought about that for a long time after we hung up. Maybe that's what this was all about. Not greed, not malice, but fear. Fear of watching me decline. Fear of being responsible for an aging parent. Fear of dealing with the messy, complicated reality of love and loss and family. But fear doesn't excuse cruelty. And it certainly doesn't excuse abandoning your 72-year-old mother at a funeral home. Last week I updated my will one more time. Linda gets a small portion, not enough to retire on, but enough to know she's forgiven. The hospital and the library still get the bulk of it. As for Robert and Sarah, well, they made their choice when they left me standing in that funeral home lobby. They left me at a funeral. So I left them at the doorstep of my lawyer. Harold was right. I am stronger than I thought. And I'm done letting anyone mistake my kindness for weakness. The house is quiet now, but it's not empty. It's full of memories and choices and the knowledge that I'm exactly where I belong. In my own home, living my own life on my own terms. That's Harold's final gift to me. Not just the money or the house, but the freedom to decide who deserves my love and who has simply been taking it for granted. Some people say you can't choose your family. But apparently when it comes to inheritance you can. If this story resonated with you, you're not alone. Family betrayal during grief is more common than anyone wants to admit. Have you experienced something similar? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes just knowing others understand can make all the difference. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories about people who refuse to be taken advantage of. We publish new stories every Tuesday and Friday about ordinary people who found the strength to stand up for themselves. And remember, if you're dealing with family members who see your vulnerability as their opportunity, you have more power than you think. Consider speaking with an estate planning attorney about protecting yourself, just like Harold protected Betty. You don't have to face family manipulation alone. You don't have to accept being treated as less than you are. And you certainly don't have to let anyone mistake your kindness for weakness. What would you have done in Betty's situation? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories often inspire the next video. Until next time, remember, family isn't just about blood. It's about respect. And respect is earned, not inherited.